Right, you lot, I've had a couple of questions this morning. It's Monday morning, well, Monday afternoon now, 12:10. I'm just going to quickly go through essays tomorrow. So your 20 markers that you're going to be doing, both the methods in context and the essay question on education that you're going to have. So please listen carefully to this. I'm not going to say it again. It's the last time I've got you, and I just thought a few of you may still be confused on your essays. So let's just have a quick look at this. Firstly, this also applies for anyone or your second years as well, doing the 30-mark essays. Basic introduction, what have I said to you? Your introduction, you need to break down the question. What is the question asking? Okay, put it in your own words. What are the problems of the question? So, for example, that you're doing a question on age and the elderly. Which elderly is the question asking you about? Is it asking you about upper class elderly, middle class elderly, working class, underclass, ethnic minorities? If the question doesn't clarify, use the question as an example of, or as a way of defining for your examiner what it's about, and that will give you brownie points. Don't just question for the sake of it, though. Make sure you know what you're doing with this one, else it will sound stupid. Your introduction is a mini plan for the rest of the essay. It is crucial. You won't do well if you skip this part. If you think you can just go straight into the main body of the essay, good luck to you. You can't, okay? The examiner will use this to frame for themselves in their head what the rest of your essay is going to involve, and it is really important that it's done properly. Essay questions. So, this is the question that was asked of me this morning. It says usually it asks you to assess the usefulness of. So, usually that question, that long one, is going to ask you to compare and contrast. It's going to ask you to assess the usefulness of, but all they're asking you, and all that means, is that is this theory any good at explaining whatever it sets out to explain? So, for example, assess the usefulness of functionalism. Now, if you're going to assess the usefulness of functionalism, you're basically asking, is functionalism any good at explaining family life or at the education system, the role of education, for example? Of course it's not, because it's not the only way of explaining education. So you have to look at what other ways there are of looking at education and where the gaps are in functionalism. For example, functionalists don't consider the impact of the lower social classes. What happens to them? The labelling theory, it doesn't look at labelling and self-fulfilling prophecy. So of course, if you're looking at one theory, you can't get 20 on 20 or 18 on 20 or the 16 on 20 mark band if you're just going to focus on functionalism. That would then just be a defined functionalism question. You're not going to pick up your marks. Be very careful that you look at other questions. For example, another question you could get in education is, if the question is asking about internal factors, then you've got to compare to external factors. So last year it was looking at internal factors and gender. But you can't look at internal factors and gender to say they're any good if you haven't compared and contrasted to external factors. So you've got to do both, and make sure you do both of those. Also, anything that makes you assess or evaluate must look at competing theories. You've got to look at these competing theories, otherwise you will not get your full range of marks. It is absolutely crucial you do that. How you do it's up to you. Make sure you do that. The middle bit, do your thing. Peel, seal, teal, creel, whatever it is, like I've said to you in the past. Use whatever structure you fancy. I don't like structures. I think you need to keep the flow. Make sure you keep the flow going. When you make a point, make sure you counter the point. Or you see it feels something else belongs there because you suddenly remember something and it links, put it in. But for this essay, the only thing you've got to remember, in my opinion, and for the middle bit, is answer the question, guys. Even if you're repeating yourself over and over again in every paragraph, make sure that every paragraph has some sort of repetition back to the question. This is crucial, and it will keep you on track too. The other last minute point, tip, is underline in the same coloured pen if you can. Underline the key concepts and theorists. As you go along, just a quick underlining of a key concept that you make or a theorist that you're talking about. Why? So you can see whether or not you're putting in any evidence. If you can't see anything underlined, then there's no evidence, and then therefore you're not going to pick up the marks that you want. Make it as easy as possible for your examiner, okay? And this is a tip there. They're going to be, like I've said to you, sat there in the sun with their glass of wine, looking at your paper on a screen. The easier you make it for them, the more they're going to love you. conclusion. Most people do not pick up marks in a conclusion. They usually just sum up, and it's usually a load of rubbish. So make sure that you have something that you agree with, totally fundamentally safe to the end, okay? Most people say, for example, in a methods in context, save triangulation and methodological pluralism as a concluding remark, as something that you could say, well, actually, if you've looked at questionnaires or you've looked at interviews, I would also look at the opposing qualitative and or quantitative in between, just so that you've covered every single corner and you're picking up marks for the end. Now, make sure you do all of that and you will be fine.